Why would you pay a buyer broker or buyer's agent 3% as a buyer? I really am looking forward to this video because I got a comment on one of my last videos asking me this exact question, and so I have several pages here to discuss it. Buckle in, might be a long video. So why in the world would someone pay a buyer's agent 3% as a buyer? I thought this was always paid by the seller. Well, I've got a lot of video in my playlist, so please defer to all of the national changes in my playlist. But I'm gonna go ahead and just deep dive answer. I took a bunch of notes, so I wanted to be really organized and thoughtful doing this video so I wouldn't forget. I'm sure there's things I did forget here, but honestly, it's so much more involved than the public might realize unless they've sold property or been a realtor. It's hard to kind of say this in like a quick conversation, so I hope it helps you today. Okay, so I think number one, first and foremost, not all agents should be treated equally, right? So there's different levels of service, there's different levels of types of agents, their knowledge and experience. So I don't think that we should all be thrown in one basket. Just like going to a car dealership, you can't classify, every car in the same category. There's luxury cars, there's mid-range, and there's lower range. So I'll start with this too, that famous quote that I love so much: if you think it's expensive to hire a professional, try hiring an amateur. And I believe that to be true. I think it's a great way to do business. I don't know anything other than being like a white glove service curated realtor for each and every client of mine. And so I showcase my value throughout the process, during the process, before the process, after the process. And so as a top tier realtor, over many, many years, it's like, I liken it to the different cars, like the different quality of cars. You might not have to pay us, by the way, so just hang with me, all right. But I liken it to going into court without having an attorney. And they call it pro se, representing yourself. I'm just a layperson. I am not going into court and going up against a tenured veteran prosecutor that this is all they do. Likewise, this is all we do. I've done this for 22 years full time in Sarasota. And so you're getting all of that experience like in a variety of different markets. Now, in the past, our commission was baked into the price. So it's always sort of been baked into the price. Now it's just sort of semantics, where we're separating it out from the deal. So the buyer, the seller, it's always sort of been priced, it's always been baked into the cost of ownership. I'm trying to get inside the mind of a buyer, right? So if I'm a buyer, I'm gonna say, well, I only wanna charge you 2%. Here's what happens. There's two things that happen when you ask for that. First of all, understand what you're asking your full-time agent. If they're a full-service agent, okay, they are gonna see you through to the end. When you start to discount someone, whether it's in real estate or another business, the mindset is not as motivated. I think that's a human characteristic. You can't fault someone for feeling a certain way if you're trying to take them from like say 3% to 2%. So it is kind of a mindset. But the other piece of that I wanted to mention as well is if I know what I charge and yet the seller is offering 3%, because I've already discounted myself, that is the most I can actually accept in the transaction. Unless the buyer agrees, okay, now I agree, now I understand the seller is paying that full commission and we can do a modification. But to me, it's just better the way that I would like to do business. It's kind of this is all new for us here in Florida, so it's gonna be foreseen, but I would prefer to just have that very upfront, direct and honest, raw conversation with my buyers right out the gate so they know exactly where they stand, what I'm gonna do for them, and what to expect for that percentage. And again, hang with me, might not have to pay it. So, next up on this long list, don't assume the buyer has to pay it. While it doesn't guarantee that you're not gonna maybe pay something, or maybe the worst case being the 3%, for example, don't assume you're gonna pay anything. You might not, because why? When you hire someone like me, I'm gonna fight to get that paid by the seller first, okay? fight for that. And it actually says it when you read your agreement, it says it in so many words. Now they're all going to be different by state, by MLS board, by area. So you're really going to have to look to your agent to find that language in there. A strong agent is not just going to take no for an answer the first time or the second time, or that maybe we'll have to put it in the offer, and we can still fight for that to be paid by the seller. So that's what you're going to get from an agent like myself. This takes knowledge, grit, tenacity, relationships. I think for myself, I have built so many realtor to realtor relationships over my 22 years that, I understand them, they understand me, we know each other, we like and trust well, maybe we don't like each other necessarily, but we respect each other, we understand each other. They know that I'm a professional, I know that they're a professional, and we want to get the job done for our clients. And like we've said in some of the videos, you've always been able to hire a flat rate or a discount agent. That has always been on the table for you, still is on the table for you. Just understand, for a flat rate agent, know what you're getting. You might go to contract and they might disappear because they're just going to sit and wait till you go to closing and cash their check. See, I don't think I'm even capable of that, right? It's just not what I've done for my entire career. But you have to compare apples to apples. Don't throw all agents into one bucket. Research them, interview them. You should interview a variety of agents. Another point I'd like to make is, I think for a buyer, it's like, try not to be so stuck on the 3% number. And here's why I say that, because during negotiations, I tend to more than make up for that for my buyers. So a lot of it has to do with negotiations, how much we get in the price, when we go through inspections, and so on throughout the transaction. So here's an example. I had a home under contract, and it was the day of the walkthrough, like day before closing, and they were out of town. Everybody's out of town. The seller's out of town, or everybody's out of town. Well, I go to do the walkthrough on behalf of my client because they just wanted to make sure to have some eyes on the property. So I go there, and it's also right after a storm. And so I go there, and there's like the ceiling is leaking. There's so much damage, possible mold. There's just a bunch of issues, and it turned out the roof needed replacement. So we were able to negotiate a $100,000 roof at the very last minute and close successfully. For $100,000, I think I more than made up the difference on the 3% commission. So that is just one of so many examples that we curate during the contract period and the inspection period, and just like, it's still up for negotiation really up until closing, and especially during your inspection period. But things happen, we have storms, and just things happen here in Florida. Another way I help clients save money either during or after the process even is because I have a very strong, solid, high quality vendor list. So again, when I say, if you think it's expensive to hire a pro, try hiring an amateur. Think about it from the vendor side too. Like, if I refer you someone, know that they're going to be very high quality, have good reviews, a good reputation, and in the end, save you money, because if you go through a bad apple, and you're going to have to spend more. For example, when I give you my insurance list, my insurance agent list, know that I have experience with these people. They have good ratings. And also, it's not always about the bottom line. Like for me, if I'm buying insurance, I don't want to just go with the lowest premium, right? So I can help guide you on that. I can look at your policies and sort of advise you. You want to go with an insurance company that's highly rated and also has a history of payouts. So like there's things like that within the depths of the contract that get really in deep, that are not necessarily what my expertise are, but I do know some things that involve things like insurance and other factors of a house, like roofing and just components of a home, that I can help save you money or save you hassle or give you peace of mind as well. Because again, people that understand the value of someone like myself are really more than willing to pay the 3%. Worst case scenario, if I cannot get it from the seller despite having fought for you. So it's not always about the money. It's more knowing that you're getting someone quality like myself and having peace of mind as well. Another thing too is we work with so many absentee owners. I just sold a house that I sold to them 17 years ago, and they called me. They weren't really here. They were up in Chicago, and the buyer flew in, and he flew back. So nobody was really here. They left it all up to me, which I feel very comfortable. We closed seamlessly. So I'm the eyes and ears. Again, this is all around Tropical Storm Debbie too. So I went after we even closed. I made sure that the house was still standing. The pool wasn't, the pool cage wasn't a mess. There was no flooding, because we've had a lot of flooding here. So I'll even go after the closing once I've been paid. I mean, I'm here, and I feel like it's a little scary if people don't have someone here to look after their home. So other services we provide. I don't just leave you hanging, Here's another one. We keep our buyers out of default. All right, let me tell you something. Listen here, Linda. So in Sarasota, in this market, with our beautiful water and our beautiful beaches and everything is so beautiful, we have high-end real estate. We have all kinds of real estate, but we have a lot of high-end real estate. And a buyer typically puts about 5% of the purchase price into an escrow deposit. So we don't want you to be in default and potentially lose your escrow deposit. So let's just say the average home is $700,000. Well, 5% of that is $35,000. I have never lost a buyer's escrow. Let's just knock on wood here. And I don't plan to. And so I keep you out of default. So you have to be in default of the contract. And there is no way when I'm in charge, I'm gonna let that happen. How do I do that? Well, thank you for asking. So the very first thing I do when I get a contract is I go line by line in the contract and make sure I have every single deadline, from the escrow, inspection, when is title due, it is in a flood zone, when can they cancel, are there special terms of the contract, and keeping tabs on every single thing. And then I email the buyer and the title office, and maybe if they're an attorney, if they need to be copied on the contract, all the parties that need to be privy to the contract. And I make sure that my deadlines are correct. So the more eyes on the contract, the better. So I send that out so people can go back and reference it, because I look at contracts every day, but buyers don't. So instead, to make it easy for my client, I put it all in an email for them that they can always refer back to. So we can always refer back to the same email, and it could be like a checklist of sorts. But to take it a step further, I'm super OCD about ensuring that everything is done way in advance of the deadline. So you're never gonna have to hopefully ask me, oh, what about this? What about that? Just know that my goal is for you to just sit back. If it's important, I will call or text you. No matter if you prefer calling, I'll call you or whatever. But just know that if it's urgent, I will call you. And I definitely don't leave things for last minute. I like things done expeditiously, properly, professionally. All of it. Another avenue that I love to help my clients save money too is through vendor referral programs. And if I, for example, refer them to an AC company, those companies oftentimes want to give me a referral fee. And I really just don't. Number one, if I'm giving a company a referral, I like them to just succeed and get the business. But moreover, I would rather them give whatever referral fee they're going to give to me to my client to offset their cost. And this is long after closing. To me, that just feels good. And I feel like, while I could make extra money, I'd rather pass that on to my clients. What about when the market changes? Well, what about it, Shayla? Well, 2020 to 2022 was a fantasy land for realtors, especially if they were newer or inexperienced or just got their license and dropped them off at the real estate office. It was easy. It really was. You could list a property and you'd have, how many offers that same day or the next day. So a market like this, where there's a lot more inventory, buyers want to look at a lot more property. We're going to work longer, harder, more hours, and spending our time and money on our buyers. And that's, this is normal. This is very normal. And an experienced agent, top tier agent, top 1% agent, whatever you want to call it, understands that. And that's just par for the course, and that's part of doing business. And we eat that cost until we get paid, right? And we don't get paid until we close on your house or you close on your house. So, you know, we're willing to put that work in and we understand that. So the question I had in one of my videos was, well, what if I found the house myself? Well, there's still all the ways that we can save you money, and it still doesn't mean you're gonna pay the 3%, whether I showed you one house or 500 houses. Trust me when I say that it's never just the one house, right? You still have to get them to closing. You still have to make sure the house is in good standing. I still do all the things behind the scenes that I would for anybody else. Again, whether I showed you 100 homes or one. And, you know, I want to make sure, even if you did find the house, I want to make sure you're buying a great investment. You're not overpaying for a property. When someone asks a question like that, it's almost like, well, should you really earn this in some way where we had to go and see 50? And quite frankly, time is our biggest asset, right? And if I agree that you're not buying in a really terrible resale area that, okay, and you love it, I'm not going to talk you out of it unless it's really, really a bad investment. I mean, I've definitely made a name for myself. People know me in this local real estate market. It's a small town. And if I would make a practice of doing that, I probably wouldn't still be in business. So it's not about the hours necessarily, but it's also like time saving. Here's another one. Does your buyer's agent look for off-market properties? Okay. There are lots of creative ways that once you're engaged exclusively with the buyer's agent, that buyer's agent, and you're paying them their full value, they're more inclined to really hustle to find you a house, even if it's off market. We have a lot of techniques in play here. We're very well networked and can find off market properties. It takes more time, more effort, because we can't just sit at a computer and find them usually, right? So there's definitely creative ways that we can help you find other properties off market that you're not competing against with other buyers. What about your agent's reputation? Believe me, there are agents in town that really have a poor reputation. And if they know this about you as the buyer's agent, they might magically not make a house available to show you. I mean, things happen, it's not right. But if you have a solid reputation, you're more inclined to have other opportunities come to your table, coming soon listings, things of that nature. When you have a good reputation, when you burn too many bridges, people in town talk, and you want to make sure you're with the right agent as well, and that can carry a lot of weight for you as a buyer. Let's talk about when deals are going south. An agent can really showcase their value by saving the transaction. I can't tell you how little of a thing can sometimes be made into a big ordeal. And little things can become big, like furniture, people negotiating a chair. You know, we are skilled at avoiding that at all costs, right? Avoiding conflict that we see arising, such as bickering over furniture. This guy, he got insulted by what your comment was about the value of his chair. Next thing you know, it's going downhill and deals fall apart like that. I've heard of it. Not me ever. I don't think I've had one like that, but like they do happen. So I know when an agent might be pushing for the buyer and the seller to meet, for example, and I always avoid that because it's not because either party has bad intention, but when you put the buyer and the seller in the room together, you're asking them to be part of the possible negotiations here. It's possible. And they might be more emotional and the other guy might be as well. And really you don't want that as part of any sort of negotiation, especially in real estate, which is your biggest asset generally. And you don't want to ruin it because of emotion or because of a silly chair. I would say another piece of value when you're paying an agent their full 3% would be peace of mind, because know that they have a track record. Like look at their reviews on Zillow or Google and read through them. Talk to people in town. Again, Sarasota, especially, is a small town. Talk to people. Talk to a few realtors. You want to be comfortable with the agent, but like having peace of mind with the person that you're working with, I think is, again, more than just the dollars and cents. Okay, Shayla, fine, I'll just go to the listing agent. Well, you're really not gonna save the 3%. That agent's gonna take the full 6%. most likely. I mean, a strong, savvy, tenured realtor would. I mean, people at the end of the day are motivated by money, and that's just human nature. So you're not going to save the money going direct to the listing. I just closed one. I had both sides. I have another one both sides. They're both 6%. So that buyer is not going to save the money because they go direct to the listing agent. It's just a fallacy that I don't know where it came up with, like who came up with it, but it's not true. Guess what else? We don't get the full 3%. So we don't just take that and just put it in our magical pockets. So we have to pay the house, right? Cold Banker Corporate takes a chunk. And then we have what's called splits. So the more I make, the higher the split. And every company is wildly different from another. If you're a brand new agent, you might be only taking home 50%. So really it's less than 50%. Plus we have to pay the tax man because we're 1099, so we're gross. We don't have taxes coming out of our money. So we have to allocate the 3% in all these different buckets because it has to be paid out. So we don't get the full 3%. I don't know if that's breaking news or not, but we don't. Ooh, here's another comment. What if money is tight and I can't pay my realtor? Well, there are options. Like I said, let's refer back to me fighting for that to be paid from the seller, right? So let's just sort of plan on that happening, although we can't put that in the document. I can't guarantee it, but I can guarantee you that I'm gonna fight tooth and nail so that you as the buyer doesn't pay it. Likewise, on the seller side, I'm gonna fight for my seller too, right? What if you are an FHA, a VA, or like a USDA type financed buyer? Well, those are interesting loans that not every seller likes. I can get into why, but not necessarily in this video. When you're paying your agent their full value, let's just say 3%, they probably know all about the intricacies of these different loans because sellers might not be very educated, and we then have to step in and educate even their agent who's maybe just accustomed to cash transactions. We see a lot of that in Longboat Key. I did a VA transaction, this was a while ago now, a house on the water, VA, and it took a lot of convincing. Like, we had to jump through a lot of hoops. That took extra time and effort and knowledge and resources. I looked to my lender contacts, and even though they weren't part of the transaction, helped me out because they know I'm going to give them business, right? So it's a full circle thing. So if that's what's best for the buyer, which is to use their VA loan or FHA or USDA, then I'm gonna fight for that, and I understand those loans. And guess what? If I don't know every intricacy of that, I can make a phone call and get the answers for you ASAP, even if your lender's not available. So full service, 3%, pay your agent. What about permits? Did you pull permits for your buyer? Well, pulling permits, we can check to see what the seller's improvements have been made that would require permitting and kind of an approximate cost. And does that line up with what the seller's saying? Does that line up with the asking price? All of these things matter. All of these things take time. Buyers don't see all the research we do. Like, I spend a lot of time making sure my buyers don't overpay on a property, doing the research, like pulling permits. This is stuff that we do for sellers, but we also do for buyers because we want to make sure that what is being sold to them is really what's being sold. What's the product that you're getting and what you're paying for that and the value you're getting for me to take all the time, care, and diligence for you as your buyer's agent. And let me address the other comment I got on what, like I said, one of my last videos. What's the checklist? I don't need to share my exact checklist because it's going to be too boring, but we'll start here. Checklist. I'm very organized. Probably one of my best skills, besides knowledge of the market, expertise, and negotiation skills, among others. I'm very, very organized. You're not gonna have to, like, it would be so embarrassing for me if a buyer had to come and ask me twice. Now, I'm only human, so sometimes, very rarely, it might happen, but it's always my goal is to under-promise and over-deliver, answer questions before you need even think of them, right? And all of the things that I've talked about in this video. Now, I'm going to end with this, and that is, I have such a strong conviction and belief in what I give to my buyers that I have a commitment to excellence. And in the commitment to excellence, it states that if you're so unhappy and I way overpromised and way underdelivered by the time we close, I'm willing to take off some of that commission. And I'm happy to put that in writing for you. That is my commitment to excellence. You can ask me for a copy of it. It's part of a 45-page resume, a CB, so to speak. I've got a lot of detail on there. I update it every year, especially this coming year with all the big changes. Every year I update it. So it's accurate. It is very much in tune with what is happening here in the market, not just here in Sarasota, but around the country. I think it's important to understand the feeder markets especially, and what's just happening in the general real estate market in this country. So, I literally wake up, eat, breathe, sleep real estate. I dream real estate. It's like I wake up and I love listening to podcasts. Keeps me energized, keeps me on track, keeps the creative juices flowing, keeps the energy going. I love what I do. I hope that you can see that. And I think when you meet me, again, it has to be a connection for both parties. Like, it's not just a one-way street. Like, there's a commitment to a certain degree on both sides. I had someone ask the other day too, like, can we cancel? I would never hold a gun to someone's head. Like, I don't have a cancellation fee in my documents. I don't, like, if I'm not doing a good enough job, just go. We can part ways. I know that some people do, and I understand that it's just a different practice. But I understand why you would, so I'm not faulting agents that do that, but I just don't. I've never charged someone, retainer fees and things like that, or cancellation fees. I would hope to earn your business maybe at a later date. I actually printed some more topics to cover because Cole Banker has another bullet points, talking points, but I think I kind of covered that in the video. So if you're still hanging with me, thank you. And I would love to be your buyer's agent. Don't be scared of the 3%. I want to kind of leave it with that, because just don't be scared that that's the number. Clearly there's many workarounds. This is new, but as a buyer's agent, I would love to sit down and have a consultation with you and go over what your needs are, what you're looking for. Obviously, that's what's most important here is you as the buyer, your wants and needs. Everybody's timeline is different too, and I've worked with people 1 day to years. It took them years to buy. So that's why I say, the person asking about showing one house, trust me, I more than make up for it in the fact that I've had to work with a buyer for years. So, and because we don't get the full 3%, it's broken down. I would hope that someone is more interested in finding an agent that's going to do a bang up job for them and help keep money actually in their pocket. Ultimately, that's what my goal is as your realtor. So I'm going to end it there. I, of course, want to hear from you or your referrals or agents that have referrals. I love those as well. We can have a conference call, a Zoom, or whatever in person. And I can be reached either by cell 941-544-7690 or email shaylatwit@gmail.com.